Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we've got a little truck to look at, an FTX Outback Mini 3, aka a whole load of other names, but they're all much of a muchness. So I was at the SST as per the last video, and it was towards the end of Sunday and I suddenly got the need to buy something. Not wanting to spend a lot of cash in the spur of the moment, I ended up with this little truck for 65 quid from Jadlam. A pretty good deal, especially as there wasn't any shipping to add. The truck is a low-cost 1/24 scale crawler with a front-mounted motor and central transfer box. Everything except the 4 AAAs for the transmitter is in the box, so it's about as ready to run as they come. We've got an almost Land Rover body, close enough that you know what it is, but slightly different to avoid legal issues. It looks a little bit funky, but it's fine for such a cheap model. In the bag of bits you get a USB charger. By the looks of it, it's the same one you got with the previous version. Also there's the manual, but since it's very much an RTR, all you really need to do is power it up and you're up and running. Worst case, you might need to tweak the steering trim to make it drive straight. There's only your basic springs holding the chassis up, no damping whatsoever, but again it's cheap, and if you're just crawling it's really not going to matter too much. In the bottom of the box is the transmitter. It's a bit smaller than your typical hobby grade handset, but still quite usable with adult hands. Once you discard the fluff, this is what you get. I'm sure with the version 2 you got some extra body clips and some other bits, but that's really not much of a deal breaker. If we flip the truck over, you can see the 4-link suspension, plastic drive shafts and the axles. Exactly the same layout as your usual 1/10 scale trucks. Nothing amazing, but for what it costs it'll do nicely. With the body off we see a very typical layout. There's a front mounted motor and gearbox next to a chassis mounted steering servo. The wiring is very neatly tied to the chassis where it goes past the transfer box to the all-in-one electronics box that has the receiver and ESC. Right at the back is the 1S LiPo. And speaking of the battery, it's a 520 mAh cell, which sounds tiny, but it should power the truck for an easy 20 minutes, and chances are it will go quite a bit longer if you're not running flat out. So that's the super quick look at the Mini 3. So since I've got a couple of Mini 2s, we might as well do a quick comparison. From the outside, with the body covering up the chassis, they look pretty much identical. The differences are all in the chassis layout. Also the battery. The Mini 2 comes with a 500 mAh that's slightly bigger than the new one. It's nice to see they've used newer cells, a little bit lighter and more capacity. The main difference though is the Mini 2 has a mid-mounted motor and gearbox. I always found the Mini 2 was easy to tip over backwards when climbing, so maybe with the front-mounted motor in the 3 that's going to improve. Also, the motor on the Mini 3 is roughly twice the size, so it might last a bit longer before it wears out. During lockdown, when the Mini 2 was getting quite a bit of use, I went through 2 motors. Also, I think I spotted Holmes Hobbies are now doing an 050 motor that's going to fit the Mini 3. I think with a bit of reorganising to shift some more weight forward, the Mini 3 will be a far better platform. I think with a bit of 3D printing we can shift the electronics over the transfer box without raising the centre of gravity. It'll be a bit sketchy going downhill, but it should climb rather nicely. Another quick difference, the transmitter, while very similar to the old one, well, the new one uses knobs to set up the trim and endpoints, which is far easier to manage for a first timer than the buttons on the old transmitter. A good choice for an entry-level RTR. However, as a non-beginner, I do rather like the buttons on the old radio, as it's far more difficult to accidentally adjust when chucking the radio in a bag. Both the versions have white lights at the front and red at the back. How they're wired is a bit different though. On the Mini 2 they just turn on when you turn the truck on. The Mini 3 though, well, let's power it up. We've got some AAAs in the transmitter, so we can turn it on so it's transmitting. Then on the truck we plug the LiPo in and we turn it on. It's all pre-bound so it'll start working right away, which is rather nice. What we find though is the lights get brighter with the throttle, which is a thing. A bit weird, but I can see what they're aiming at. lights that turn on and off without having to add an extra channel. Things get weird at the back though. As you throttle up, the red LEDs get to roughly half brightness at half throttle, then they get dimmer towards full throttle. I'd almost think it was broken, but I'm pretty sure it's meant to do that. There's some sort of interaction with the motor PWM. I think ultimately I'll design a mini ESC and light controller module so I have full control over the LEDs, and so I can use a full-size transmitter. But that'll be for another day when time allows. It'll get added to the list of projects that only ever seems to get bigger. These little trucks are best used indoors with a course made from boxes and books. On a rainy day, when there's nothing on TV, they're a huge amount of fun. Outside, they do struggle a bit, but in the right conditions, they're still a lot of fun. But ground litter and small rocks can end up being a major obstacle. Either way, we have the stock Mini 3 and in the background is a Mini 2 with weighted wheels. In general, they're pretty evenly matched. The Mini 2 being a bit more planted with a lower centre of gravity. A few mods to the Mini 3 and I think it is going to make the better truck though. There's quite a few low-cost 1/24 scale trucks around these days, and to be quite honest, they're all very good value. The main thing to choose from is the body style and transmission layout. If you want to get a bit more serious about tiny trucks, then Axial's SCX24 is the way to go. There's a very healthy aftermarket of chassis, metal upgrades, and just about everything else you'd expect to see on a 1/10, let alone a 1/24. The problem is they cost £120 and up. For me, the low cost of the FTX is its main feature. Get two and set up an indoor competition and you're going to have a lot of fun without breaking the bank. Right, and that's about it for this week, so as always, thanks for watching, like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!